Welcome back to the Peace Love Hormones podcast. It is me, Maddie Miles, your host and the founder of Peace Love Hormones. And today we are going to be talking about oral health and the oral microbiome. And you may be wondering, why in the world are we talking about teeth and our oral microbiome and health today? How does that relate to overall women's health and hormonal and reproductive health? Well, I will tell you this without getting too deep into it, because I really want to focus today on just natural, holistic ways that you can support your oral health. But I do want to give some context, some overview and insight into why our oral health is so important. Our oral health is connected to the health and well-being of our entire mind and body, specifically to our gut health and our gut microbiome, to our thyroid, to our brain. It is connected to every single part of our body. After all, it is the very top, the start of our digestive system, right? So many of us are experiencing gut issues and maybe unknowingly are also experiencing oral health issues, or maybe you do know that you're experiencing gingivitis or some inflammation of the gums or cavities, and you're not really making the link that, oh, I'm also bloated all the time, or experiencing gas or irregular bowel movements, constipation, etc. Now, granted, bioindividuality, and there are so many nuances to everything. You could be experiencing great oral health and struggling with your gut health at the same time, and vice versa, but usually they go hand in hand. I have seen so many women in my private practice and outside, just in my clinic internships and in research, seen so many women who are experiencing both oral health issues and gut health issues. So we don't just fix one, we work on both, of course, but I love to make that connection for everyone. It's so important. Additionally, poor gum health and overall poor oral health is linked to an increased risk in type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular-based risks such as heart disease. In fact, those who struggle with gum disease are 25% more likely to experience heart disease and cardiovascular-based issues, which is mind-boggling, right? Because that's obviously a huge issue in the United States. So again, we should just be taking better care of our oral health. And if you're anything like me or like the average American, you probably have not put too much thought or spent too much energy when it comes to your oral health and your oral microbiome. Maybe you didn't even know that there was a microbiome in our oral cavity, because most of us, outside of the 2 times a year that we see a dentist, we don't really think that much about our teeth and about our oral health and things that we can do on a daily and weekly basis to support our oral microbiome and how that's connected to everything. Again, I'm not saying that, for example, if you are experiencing brain fog, it's because your oral microbiome is off. But we know that everything in the body is related to each other, and very rarely are we having a local issue. Most of the time it's systemic, right? So it may start local. For example, maybe you start off with having some pain in your arm and some inflammation around in that area, or some gut health issues, but it really spreads. Everything's connected, right? And I'm not saying like it spreads to instill fear in you all, just to let you know how cool and amazing the body and the mind are. Everything is connected. It's all one and the same. So most things are a systemic effect, especially if issues go on chronically. So maybe you didn't really pay any attention to your oral health outside of those 2 twice a year dentist appointments. Maybe you spent a little bit more time and energy on your oral health because maybe you had some jaw issues and or wisdom teeth. I got 4 wisdom teeth taken out when I was, how old was I? I think I was 17 years old when I got those taken out, and it was brutal. And maybe or you had really crooked teeth and overlapping teeth, and so you had braces or Invisalign. I've met so many people who had really traumatic experiences with the orthodontist and getting their teeth pulled and straightened and all of these things. So it's like, you know, outside of those situations, we don't really think much about our oral health, and I am here to dedicate an episode to talking about how we can take care of our oral health holistically, because everything we do over here on the Peace Love Hormones podcast is natural and holistic. Not to say that conventional medicine doesn't have its place. I believe it does, but I think we rely on conventional medicine way too much, and it doesn't actually help us create long-lasting, deep, healthy changes. It's really like a quick fix type of thing. So when it comes to our oral microbiome, like most things, it's not an overnight fix. This is something that we should be taking care of on a daily basis. And our body always responds really well to that and really responds well to the natural healing modalities. So this is not going to be an exhaustive episode. Again, I want to get a biological dentist on here in the next month or two to really have like a much more in-depth episode, probably like an hour long, just talking about all things oral health. And, perhaps the biological dentist can really instill in us all like just how important the oral microbiome is. I personally really care about the oral microbiome, not just because like I'm nerdy and I'm a researcher and I understand the importance of the oral microbiome and the oral health as it pertains to the health and vitality of the rest of our body and mind, yes, including our hormones, our reproductive health, fertility, and menstrual ovulatory cycles. But it, as in oral health, really came into my radar a few years ago when I was stopping hormonal birth control. And I went pretty much my entire life, like no cavities, no issues with my oral health. I didn't have too much of an overlap with my teeth, so I didn't need braces for a year plus. I just had Invisalign for about 6 months. So I was definitely one of those people who did not think a lot about my oral health and did not know how important it was until stopping birth control. I went for my checkup, my twice-a-year checkup with my dentist, who I don't see anymore because I see a biological dentist now for a more holistic approach to oral health. But I was going in for my cleaning, and she told me that I had inflammation of the gums and gingivitis. And I remember being like, oh my gosh, what does this mean? How did this happen? Like, I don't drink coffee. I don't drink soda. I don't eat processed foods. Like, how could this have happened, And so I was like, clearly it's deeper than how I'm viewing this. And I'm going to go do my own research because I got little to no answers. Big whoop. So I got really deep into oral health, and I learned about the connection between hormones and our oral health, because hormones are just, have a part in everything, and specifically synthetic hormones from hormone replacement therapy or hormonal contraceptive, which I had just stopped after 6 years of taking hormonal birth control pills. So anyway, not to go down the rabbit hole of all the ways in which hormonal contraceptive impacts women on a deep systemic level. We've already talked about that plenty, and we don't need to talk about that today. Today is about oral health and how to take care of your oral health. So for the sake of this episode, I'm going to give a super brief overview of the anatomy and structure of our teeth. Again, I want this episode to really be about how to take care of your oral health. So if this is boring to you, you can just skip over this, minute or two that I'm just going to do a super elementary 101 review. So the outermost layer of our teeth is the enamel. Then we get into the dentin, and then we get into the pulp, which is like the soft tissue that contains the blood vessels, the nerves, and the connective tissue. And it plays a crucial role in the nourishment of our teeth as it receives nutrients from blood vessels and delivers them to cells within the tooth. Additionally, bacteria from the gums and to lesser amounts, the pulp can travel into the bloodstream into other parts of our body. So that are known as endotoxins. We obviously want to reduce that because that can impact, again, just the systems and the organs and the tissues and the cells of the entire body and of the mind. And then, of course, we have our jawbone, which is right underneath the gum baseline, and the roots extend into the jawbone, and this anchors the tooth in place. When we talk about teeth health specifically, and we talk about tooth decay, we are referencing the mineralization and the demineralization of teeth. So our teeth are always in either one of the two states, either in mineralization, which is good, or demineralization, which is where we're getting into the decay of the tooth and can create cavities as well. Cavities are exactly how they sound. They're just holes where bacteria can burrow. And when it comes to the remineralization of cavities, because yes, this is possible, we can literally fill and remineralize our cavities, we need to take care of the pH of our saliva. We don't want our saliva to be too acidic. We don't want it to be too basic either, preferably neutral, slightly basic. But so many of us, because of chronic snacking, because of all of the coffee or acidic drinks that we're drinking, caffeine drinks, we are constantly feeding the so-called bad bacteria in our mouth, which produces acid, and then the pH of our saliva becomes very acidic. It causes the demineralization of our teeth, which can lead to, especially on a long-term chronic basis, cavity formation. And of course, if that then reaches beyond the dentin, beyond the pulp, that is when some more serious dental medical intervention is needed. But if you just have a cavity within the first either enamel, the dentin, into some amount in the pulp, we can actually refill them. So it's really important that we actually do these practices on a daily and weekly basis to support our oral health, to support our teeth, so that we don't have to have this traumatic experience in the dental office. We can actually have a really great time 1 to 2 times a year that we go in to see the dentist for our cleaning. Before I get into what to do for your oral health, let's talk about what not to do, right? So I kind of talked about it just a second ago, but decreasing the consumption of the number one, man-made processed foods and sugars, including soft drinks. Soft drinks are, again, I'm going to really try and just focus in on oral health today, because we could talk for a long time about how all of these things impact not just our oral health, but the health and well-being of our mind and our entire body and the systems, organs, tissues, cells that make up our body and allow us to survive and thrive. But truly, like when it comes to our teeth health, energy drinks and the soft drinks are some of the worst things that we can drink when it comes to our oral health. Don't be scared of fruits and vegetables. Yes, these contain sugars, but there's even some studies to show that, the sugars from an apple and eating an apple are actually really great for our gum health and our teeth health. And beyond just the natural sugars from fruit, just in general, when we're talking about like natural sugars and naturally acidic foods, such as citrus, please, please, please do not be afraid of these foods and don't cut them out for the sake of your teeth. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't drink coffee or you shouldn't drink acidic tea or you shouldn't eat citrus or fruits, I don't want to say that. These are some of my favorite things myself, but if we're going to be eating, number one, just if we're eating in general, but especially if we're eating something that's more acidic or more sugary, to either brush your teeth after you're done eating, or you could do a little sea salt rinse. It's as simple as it sounds, just adding some sea salt into some water, swishing it in your mouth. The lazy girl hack, I just put some sea salt on my tongue, take a little drink of water, and then swish it around in my mouth for 30 to 60 seconds. You can also do like maybe a little bit of baking soda if it was something super, super acidic and you're like, oh, I just feel a little spicy in my mouth. And really, it's just like rinsing out your mouth, right? And even if you just used water, if you use some spring water, because that's all you have on hand near you, then that will work as well. You could also do some mouthwash, and we'll get into like the right type of mouthwashes here in a few minutes. But essentially, to conclude on the food part, right? Like, I don't want you or anyone to be afraid of eating natural, wholesome foods, even if they are acidic or even if they are more sugary and starchy. Again, yes, the bacteria loves that, and we want to make sure that our mouth isn't acidic all of the time. But that's why, you eat a meal or drink a drink for anywhere from 10 to 30 minutes, and then you do a little mouthwash, or you brush your teeth, or you swish around some water, and then you don't eat again for, another 3 to 4 hours. So that's totally fine for your oral microbiome. That is, we need to eat as humans. We need nutrients in order to survive and thrive and to feed the healthy bacteria in our oral microbiome, our gut microbiome, and the microbiomes of our entire body, right? So going back to like what I first said about the man-made processed foods, those, again, have health implications across the board, which are, just not positive, but especially like the soft drinks and the diet soda and diet Coke and drinking coffee perpetually, like throughout the day, just constantly sipping on coffee. These are very acidic. These are very processed, high sugar content, and are going to feed the bacteria in your mouth that is going to produce the acidity and acidic saliva in your mouth, and is going to cause the demineralization. So preferably just kicking those processed foods to the sides and those processed drinks, just kind of getting those out of the picture. And in general, after you eat or drink something that is acidic or sugary, or just eat something in general, to rinse out your mouth a little bit. Next thing to not do is mouth breathing. When we have our mouth open and we're mouth breathing, we are doing a few things. Number one, we're allowing more bacteria to enter in, right? No brainer, that one's simple. But also we want our mouth to be warm and we want it to be moist. So when we're mouth breathing, we are creating a dry and not warm. Maybe it's not freezing cold, but it's not warm and moist. It's more on the dry side. And so of course there are times when mouth breathing is warranted. I'm not saying like don't mouth breathe if you need to. Let's say you're running sprints up a hill, or whatever the situation is. If you need to mouth breathe, please, please, please use your intuition and mouth breathe. Don't not do it just because you heard Maddie Miles say on a podcast that nasal breathing is better for you. It is. Nasal breathing is better for you. It's better for the oral microbiome. It's better for the nervous system. And it is better for our nasal passageways and for our jaw health. And it's just the better thing to do across the board. But that being said, sometimes we do need to mouth breathe. So use your common sense and your intuition, which we all have. And, just be aware of like how much you mouth breathe. A lot of people, myself included, will tape their mouth shut at night with some non-toxic mouth tape. It does not have to be your whole lips. I have like a little tape that just is like a little X over my lips. So if my body needs to use my mouth breathe, I can easily open up the sides of my lips and mouth breathe. But just really trying to be conscious and aware of not mouth breathing as much as possible during the day, especially if you're feeling stressed, really tune in, check in with your breath. And nasal breathe in through your nose, out through your nose. And at night, maybe, I'm not saying do this or don't do this, but maybe try out the mouth tape at night. Next thing to minimize and actually just completely cut out is unhealthy mouthwash. Many people are using alcohol-based mouthwashes, which reduces nitric oxide in the oral cavity, which is important for the production of nitric oxide throughout the entire body. Nitric oxide is important because it promotes vasodilation within blood vessels in the oral cavity, nose, brain, throat, and heart. Side note, nasal breathing also supports the production of nitric oxide, which is another reason to focus on nasal breathing. Next, drinking alcohol, something that again across the board has, health implications, but when we're considering oral health specifically, alcohol disrupts the oral microbiome. It changes the pH of our saliva and places our teeth into that demineralization state, which again, we don't want to be in because that can cause cavities. And it also kills certain cells of the mouth. Next is hormonal birth control. I talked about this earlier because of my own journey with hormonal birth control in my oral health and microbiome, but changes in hormones across the board impact the pH of our saliva, which in return impacts our oral microbiome. Hormones also impact our immune response and our ability to reduce inflammation, which impacts oral health and the health of our entire body and mind. So for a full discussion, I have plenty of podcast episodes on hormonal contraceptives, natural birth control, things to consider, etc. I also have a whole podcast episode on the pros and cons of the hormonal IUD. Next, something to consider removing are stimulants such as Adderall. Of course, if you need Adderall, please, again, take everything I say on this podcast episode and all my episodes with a grain of potassium. This is not medical advice. Please consult with your healthcare practitioner, whoever prescribed you the Adderall, and, again, explore other avenues, but please do not cold turkey stop a medication because you listened to this episode. But take these into consideration and maybe explore different avenues, because we do know that stimulants like Adderall, there are many stimulants, but Adderall is an example that I just brought up because it increases adrenaline and noradrenaline. These stimulants make the pH of the saliva more acidic, which allows for the growth of bacteria such as Streptococcus mutans, which is one of the air quote bad bacteria in the mouth that loves to feed on the sugars and produces acid and makes our saliva more acidic, which can lead to cavities. Stimulants also encourage mouth breathing, which isn't great for our oral health, like we mentioned before. Next, smoking, cannabis included, and vaping. So many people are vaping. I'm an herbalist. Many people think that I am pro cannabis, and there's definitely evidence to prove that it supports with menstrual cramps and pain. But I'm personally not the biggest fan of it. You just always have to weigh out the pros and cons of things. And I think that it can be a great tool, but there are also so many other herbs that I would use for menstrual cramps and inflammation and PMS before I would use cannabis. And just across the board, I'm not a fan of smoking because of the oxidation that it creates within the body. It's not great for our oral health. It's not great for our lungs. It's not great for our brain. So not a fan of smoking across the board. And I'll have a whole other podcast episode in the future where I do talk about cannabis and my experience with cannabis, and we can get into some research as well. Because you don't just need my experience and my opinions, but we'll get into some really sound research. Next, dip tobacco. I see so many people still doing this, especially people who are younger, and I'm like, why? Why are you doing this? It can cause degradation of the gum tissue and even raise risk for gum cancer. So ideally, we keep our oral cavity via the saliva fairly neutral or slightly basic, not acidic. So how do we do this, right? Like, what are the things that we can actively do? So let's go back to the mouthwash conversation. Choose a very simple mouthwash that is alcohol-free. That is very important, alcohol-free, and perhaps contains different herbals, like an herbal-based mouthwash. I have a great recipe for this on my Instagram page and on the Peace Love Hormones website. But using a mouthwash that has, number one, it's simple. Number one, perhaps some herbs in there that help to reduce gum inflammation and support the overall oral microbiome. But xylitol is it's an artificial sugar, but it's interesting because many mouthwashes do contain xylitol, including an herbal-based one that I use. And although I don't think that we should be adding xylitol to our food and consuming and swallowing ingesting xylitol in large amounts, it is really interesting the research that we have on xylitol in Streptococcus mutans. So that bacteria that I just named, a really prevalent bacteria in most adult humans, and to kids too, but especially in adults because you can pass it between people. It's not a bacteria that we're born with. It's something that we can actually pass to people through sharing drinks and through kissing. And it loves to eat sugars. It especially loves to eat xylitol. However, when it eats xylitol, it doesn't produce that acid like it does with other sugars when it consumes those sugars. It actually dies. So xylitol kills Streptococcus mutans. So xylitol decreases inflammation of the gums and other soft tissues in the mouth. So again, I don't recommend swallowing it. We don't have a lot of research out there to show the health implications, potential health implication, especially gut implications of ingesting xylitol. But if you want to swish it around in your mouth with some other herbs as a part of a herbal alcohol-free mouthwash and then spit it out, amazing, right? Really, really great for your oral microbiome. Next is using a natural, non-toxic, just like a non-toxic mouthwash, a non-toxic, non-endocrine disrupting toothpaste, and preferably a toothpaste that contains hydroxyapatite, which is a mineral that is naturally occurring in our teeth and strengthens the bonds in our enamel. So hydroxyapatite, way better than fluoride. Fluoride is not a naturally occurring mineral that is already in our teeth, but hydroxyapatite is. So you can get a great toothpaste that, again, is natural, non-toxic, and contains that hydroxyapatite and will strengthen the bonds in the enamel of your teeth. Next is oil pulling a few times a week or daily if you can and like to do that with coconut or sesame oil. Oil pulling is an ancient Ayurvedic practice that involves swishing around oil in the mouth for several minutes and spitting it out. It may be used to improve oral hygiene by reducing plaque buildup, preventing gum disease, and freshening up the breath. Sea salt rinse, especially after eating meals, or again, if you don't have sea salt near you, let's say you're out at a restaurant or you are just like on a plane or traveling or something like that, just swishing around some water in your mouth after you eat and spitting it out. Next would be mastic chewing gum. I love mastic so much. It is very, very powerful when ingested for H. pylori and to support overall gut health and the gut microbiome. But when you chew it, because you can actually chew the tree sap, the resin, it improves the oral microbiome, especially if you eat it after meals. Again, let's say you don't have time to brush your teeth, or you don't have access to a sink to be able to brush your teeth or like swish around herbal mouthwash. You can also chew a piece of this gum. It helps to freshen your breath. It rebalances the oral microbiome, and it improves the jaw strength, which is amazing. And a lot of people call it ancient beauty gum. That's what my team and I call it. We call it ancient beauty gum because it really does tone and strengthen your jaw, which is so important, and it encourages nasal breathing as well. It also supports digestive health, which I know I already mentioned, but chewing mastic gum after a meal can be super supportive as well. So if you want to buy some mastic chewing gum, you can chew it up after a meal, and my mastic chewing gum will be out within the next few weeks. So yay! And then reducing the amount of snacking and eating to give our oral hygiene time to settle. So it's similar with our gut microbiome, right? Like we don't want to be chronically snacking all day long. We're just spiking our blood sugar, and we're never getting our blood sugar back to like neutral if we're snacking all day long. And our digestive system is just constantly working if it's constantly having to work on digesting the food, assimilating the nutrients, divvying up those nutrients to the cells that need them, etc. So similar concept with our oral health. We don't want to just be eating all day long or drinking coffee or tea all day long, because that will change the pH of our oral microbiome, of our saliva. So we want to give our oral microbiome time to just be neutral and to just settle between meals. So again, please eat if you're hungry, if you need a snack between meals. But preferably we eat enough at our meals that we're able to go 3 to 4 hours between meals. So I usually have a snack between lunch and dinner because that's like the longest gap of the day that I have personally between meals, and I get hungry. So I have a snack between them. So again, please do not be afraid of snacking. Do not be afraid of eating. Just play it smart, right? And like your goal should be similar to mine of like, I want to eat such satiating meals that I'm able to go long periods of time between meals, like 3.5 to 4 hours before I have to eat again. And of course, bio-individuality, because some people, because of, their current health status or inability to digest big meals or hypoglycemia, do need to eat more frequently. So bio-individuality always. Next is tongue scraping. Tongue scraping is another ancient oral hygiene practice that has been used for centuries in various cultures, including Ayurvedic and traditional Chinese medicine. It's primarily used to remove food debris, dead cells, and other debris that can accumulate on the surface of the tongue, especially in the back of the tongue, and especially while we're sleeping. It's super easy and quick. Just gently take a tongue scraper, a stainless steel one, from the back to the front of your tongue about 10 times. Emphasis on the gentle. I see so many people aggressively doing this, and I always feel really bad for their taste buds. And then next and last, but certainly not least, is just brushing and flossing, which are the typical, right? I saved the most basic for last. We should be brushing our teeth at least twice a day, in the morning and at night before we go to bed, and flossing 1 to 2 times a day as well. I usually floss personally at night before bed, but if I need to floss during the day because I get something stuck in my teeth, or I just feel like I just ate a meal that makes me really want to floss my teeth right now, then I will also floss. I'm flexible with it. I'm not like, I can only floss at night. Like, obviously floss and brush your teeth as needed, but at the very least, brush your teeth in the morning, brush your teeth at night, using a gentle brush. So not like a hard bristle. If you look at the toothbrushes in the grocery store, when you're buying your toothbrush, you can buy the soft, you can buy the medium, you can buy the hard, and I think there's even an extra hard for some brands. So definitely choosing the soft bristles. I have listened to many biological dentists talk about this, and they all agree that using softer bristles is the best to really break up the biofilm on the teeth and to not cause any damage. Also, brushing not just our teeth, but also our gums to increase circulation. And you will also feel chills, similar to if you do dry brush your body and you feel the chills from the circulation and the lymphatics moving. Brushing your gums really softly with a soft toothbrush bristle is going to increase circulation, which is really great for your gum health and for your teeth health and overall oral health. And then also your tongue. Some dentists actually brush their tongue with a different toothbrush, I've learned, than they brush their teeth with, which is interesting. I personally use the same toothbrush, and I also do tongue scrape as well. So I will take my soft toothbrush and I will go back to front with my toothbrush about 10 or so times. I don't always count it out. And then I will also use a tongue scraper. I love tongue scraping, and I feel like a lot of gunk comes off, especially living in Texas, where I feel like I have a lot more exposure to allergens. So sometimes phlegm can build up, and I really just love to get all of that out of there. So I'll do brushing. Usually my oral health hygiene is I will wake up in the morning, I will do an herbal xylitol mouthwash rinse. I'll tongue scrape, and then I eat breakfast, and I hydrate first, and then I eat breakfast, and I'll brush my teeth after eating breakfast. And then throughout the day, when I eat, lunch or another snack, I will do a little, I'll either do like a sea salt mouth rinse, or I'll chew a piece of mastic gum. And then at night, I floss. And again, like I said before, if I need to floss during the day, I totally do that. But I floss at the very least at night. And then, so I floss, I brush my teeth, I do a little mouth rinse. And then if I feel like anything is built up on my tongue throughout the day, I'll do another little tongue scrape. Again, just 1 to maximum 10, little front or back to front strokes, and then I'm done and my teeth feel great. And I love to oil pull. I use coconut oil because I'm allergic to sesame, but I oil pull probably on a good week, like 4 times. And I can't tell you how long I do it because sometimes I just forget it's in there. So I'm doing it for well over 5 minutes, but some people are doing it for like 10 to 20 minutes. I don't know if I've ever done it as long as 20 minutes, and a little bit is better than nothing. So if you can only do 1 to 2 minutes, that's still really, really great for your oral health. So that is all I have to say for today's episode. I cannot wait to have a biological dentist on here to talk all about, even more so about oral health and the oral microbiome. But we did go over some really great things in today's episode. Number 1, we just talked about why the oral microbiome is important and its links to our overall health and vitality and longevity as human beings. And we also did a brief overview of like cavities and the structure of our teeth, and that we can actually remineralize cavities if they have not gone too deep. And then we got into the ways to support not just the prevention of cavities and the remineralization of our teeth, but to support the overall oral health and microbiome by things to remove, drastically either reduce or remove, such as eating the processed foods, drinking the soft drinks, and mouth breathing, and stimulants, especially stimulants that are not prescribed to us and not necessary for our health and our functioning. And we talked about smoking and tobacco and dip and all of these things and how they impact, and also alcohol-based mouthwashes. We talked about how that negatively impacts the oral microbiome. And then we got into actionable, natural, healthy ways to support your oral microbiome via natural mouthwashes, hydroxyapatite toothpaste, nasal breathing, and perhaps exploring mouth taping at night. And we also talked about mastic gum and a sea salt rinse and oil pulling and tongue scraping. So you do not have to do all of these things. If you just want to try one thing at a time, see what works for you, see what resonates. I personally love to do that. Sometimes I have the mentality of like all or nothing, like let's just try it all. But that's also because I'm really curious and I love to try things out. So again, I provided a really big list of things that you could do to support your oral health. Highly recommend at least trying one of them out this week, and then maybe the following week you add in another one and see what you really like and see what's easy for you to remember. And then last thing I'll say is to look into finding a biological dentist near you, because it's like seeing a naturopath, but for oral health and for your dental health. So I think that's really, really important. And they are a great addition to your overall healing team and your healing journey. If you loved this episode, please do share this on your stories or to share it with a family, a friend, a loved one. It means the world to me to have you here listening. If you haven't already, subscribe to this podcast, whether you're listening on Spotify or on Apple or you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to subscribe, give this a like, comment any future topics that you really want to learn about. Thank you again so much with all of my heart for tuning in and for your love and for your support. I feel it. I really, really do. Until next time, peace, love, hormones.